Yes, so we can.
So I'm in the 7th grade, and I have delusions of becoming a scientist one day. Scientists, I have been told, speak German. So when I have a chance to sign up for a foreign language, I say, I'm going to take German, even though I know that this is going to be problematic because my father is a Holocaust refugee. So I spend the afternoon sort of stealing up my arguments about why I absolutely need to speak German because I'm going to be this amazing scientist. And so when my dad gets home from work, I sit him down and I get all my enthusiasm and my back straight and I tell him that this is what I've chosen. And he surprises me. He's really attentive and calm and supportive. And he speaks 7 languages, so I can tell he's really excited that I'm going to join this club of linguists. So he works for the airlines, and so our family has all this international travel. So he says, you know what, Saskia, why don't we do a family trip to Germany so that you can get a sense of the culture and the language? So 10 days later, we're on a plane to Munich. And the plane lands, and even though we're terribly jet-lagged, we just take a few moments to drop our luggage off at the hotel and then hop in a cab so that we can begin our sightseeing immediately. So 45 minutes later, we arrive at our destination, and I'm greeted by this giant set of iron gates that say Arbeit macht Frau. And I realize that this is my first lesson in German. It means work will make you free. And we are, of course, at the Dachau concentration camp. I realized at this moment that I had confused supportive with calculating. And so he turns to me and he said, Saskia, you make a really interesting argument about learning German, but because of who I am and because of who you are, you need to see this first. So, and I get where he's coming from. So when my dad was 2 years old, his brother was 4, his parents were forced to leave their home in Belgium, and they had a diamond cutting business. And my grandparents take their 2 little toddlers and they run. They run away from the Nazi occupation. They go to Holland, and Holland collapses, and they go to France. They're halfway through France when the SS seize their car and leave them on the side of the road with their baggage and their toddlers, and thankfully their lives. They literally walk to the south of France, where they spend a year hiding out, looking over their shoulders, paranoid, afraid, while my grandfather tries to work out a trip to emigrate to Brazil via Morocco. So they had left with the diamonds sewn in their clothes. And it pretty much took all of their wealth and the better part of their sanity, but they did get to Brazil. And so my father, who's a little boy, war's behind him. He's grown up on the beaches of Rio de Janeiro and loving life. But every night he gets to come home to these dark and gloomy paranoid parents who fill his head with fear and distrust and paranoia. And so the war never really leaves him. And he develops this instinct so that when he's 26 years old with a new wife and a baby, he can read the signs that Brazil is about to collapse into a military coup. So he takes my mom and my brother and they come to the United States. And she now is a refugee too. So my father tells me these stories throughout my childhood, and they're stories. They're lots of fleeing and take your money and don't trust the banks and all that stuff. But, I'm a white suburban American kid who's been all over the world thanks to those airline benefits. And I think, wow, you're really overly dramatic. But then I'm standing there at the Dachau concentration camp, and everything changes, and I change, because my 13-year-old feet are standing in the soil where LGBT people and Jews and Poles and political dissenters were enslaved and murdered. And now these stories, they have context to me. So we walk through the museum and we talk a lot about Adolf Hitler, who's my father teaching me. And we talk about how he rose to power by discrediting the media and manipulating the military and raising the fear of the working class by threatening, making them afraid for their jobs and letting them channel all that fear and hatred into people who are different, their scapegoats. So we walk through the camp and the images are really gruesome and their impact is indelible on me. And so as we're leaving the camp now, where my back is to the gates, and my father asked me a question. He's like, well, tell me what you see. And I don't understand the question because we're leaving now. What do I see? I see a neighborhood. I see a bland suburb. But that's exactly the point. When the Americans liberated the prisoners at Dachau, they were struck by its location, nestled among family homes in a neighborhood. And so my father challenged me. He said, you know, the people of Dachau, when they went to work and went grocery shopping and let their kids play out in the yard and went to school, do you think that they didn't see the truckloads of prisoners arriving but never leaving? Did they not smell the decay of the rotting corpses in those abandoned cars? The question was really, were they ignorant or were they ignoring it? Were they complacent? Because if they were complicit. So I have to believe that these people in the neighborhood, they can't all be Nazi sympathizers. I have to believe that some of them really were just trying to live their lives, to raise their kids and go to work and come home and hope that it would all go away. That their government's moral compass, that their institutions, that all the things that they had known to be true in their lives would hold true and everything was going to be okay. But I know we all know how that story turned out. So I think about this trip to Dachau a lot lately. I think about Adolf Hitler and I think about Donald Trump. I think about fake news. I think about people telling us not to believe what we read in the paper and not to believe what we see, but to believe what this man is telling us. I think about riling up the working class and making people afraid and singling out Muslims and LGBT people and people from shithole countries. I think about my white, privileged, wonderful life where I'm trying to raise my family and send my kids to school and retire and live out the American dream. And I think I would have made a terrible scientist, because I'm really bad at that, and just as bad at history. But the one thing I did learn is that if we are complacent, then we are complicit. And so I share these perspectives with my 3 teenage kids who are also white, privileged, and well-traveled. And they say, oh, Mom, you are so overly dramatic. And I hope they're right. Thank you.